I want to first talk about the seasons of the year. I've talked about this a bit of learning to tune into the cycles and the seasons, Imbolc being what we call a cross-quarterly holiday. So if we look at the life cycle of all things, if we compare our trip around the sun with the life cycle, I like to think about a plant. So in the winter, there's a little seed of a plant buried in the soil, in the cold, in the dark, and it's resting and it's building energy and it's all potential. So this midwinter, right now, Imbolc is midwinter. So we are that little seed buried in the ground. We've had some rest, we're gathering energy, and we're preparing to burst upward and outward. So we're buried inside ourselves. If we have no traumas, if we have no wounds or pain, then we're just having a good rest in our cozy cave. However, if we are regular humans, then we have wounds and we have traumas and pains that have not been resolved. And so when we dive inward in this time of winter, that the pain and the trauma are surrounding us. So if we haven't resolved it at the time of that trauma, our psyche buried the pain down into our cave. We buried it away to deal with later. So now here we are, surrounded by all the things that our psyche put off for later. And so it can be a little bit, our cave can be a little bit scary. And we're surrounded by these shadows of our unresolved traumas and wounds. So we want to work with the energy, with all of these cycles, this trip around the sun. It affects everything on Earth, not just our bodies, not just, everything around us is affected by where we are in this trip around the sun. So if we work with that energy, we can really do some good healing work. So this time of being far from the sun, we are naturally driven inward. Like I said, the cold and the dark turn us inside where we can see those wounds. And simultaneously, we're halfway through winter. So we're starting to head back towards the sun, where the sun can shed some light on our wounds. So we're returning to the light, and we can use that energy to really illuminate the past. But then there's the root of the wounds, the crux, that it's those things that keep popping up over and over again in our psyche. It's the patterns that keep repeating yourself when you say, oh, here I am again. I'm learning the same lesson again. That's because the root of some wound is still lodged in us. It hasn't been fully resolved. And in order to fully resolve at the root or roots, we have to learn some type of lesson. So we need to sit with it and face it. Look it straight in the eyes and understand whatever it is that we need to understand about this wound. That's the thing that makes it possible for it to be resolved. So either that the wound, the pain is resolved, maybe even the whole pattern is resolved. But we're hopefully putting that wound, by hearing the lesson, it's like the wound is free to go into a zone where it can be dissolved and transformed. So, and sometimes though, hearing the lesson, getting the lesson isn't even enough. We then have to alter our behavior patterns. So not just hearing it, but then walking the talk. So sometimes we have to adjust behavior patterns or our thought patterns for that wound to be totally resolved. So because our spirit chose to be in the body and on some level, in some mysterious way, chose to have all these things happen to us, our soul wants to learn certain lessons. So we can't just push those wounds away. We can't just dissolve them or remove them or ignore them, because then we're working against what our soul is longing for and what our soul's purpose is. Its purpose is to learn from all of it, all the good stuff, all the beautiful stuff, and all the ugly. We can rise up with more wisdom. So that's the point of looking at this stuff, is to relieve ourselves from pain, but also to become wiser. Check that lesson off in our syllabus for this lifetime of learning that lesson. That little seed that we are can burst forth this time around the sun, wiser, stronger, and therefore having new capacity for joy and love, more vitality, all of the things when we shed some of the pain and the burden of the pattern. These patterns are burdens. And when we can resolve a pattern, we're opening up more space for new patterns, more love, more compassion, all the good stuff. So we're going to be gentle with how quick or not quick things happen and just keep at it. And know each little bit that, but we're not going to give up, because each little bit that we work on, each little bit that we transform means we've created more space for love. The three basics of today. The first thing when we start moving is the divine masculine. That masculine energy, the solar energy, the light, the objective, the completely non-judgmental view of things. He wants us to call him in from the beginning. So we're going to bring in that good non-judgmental compassion through our crown and shedding light down into our core. Then we have the feminine. Now we've talked about the Earth Star chakra in this class. For those of you who haven't had that, we have those chakras in our body, and then we have chakras above us and below us. So he's going to be connecting above, and we're going to connect with the chakra below us that I'm going to call the Earth Star. So it's actually part of our energy body, buried down in the earth, but it's out of our physical body, so it's a really good place to send pain. So we're going to work on releasing some of the layers while we listen to the wounds and the pain. We're going to make a funnel, the counterclockwise, and funnel things down to the Earth Star, whatever hurt and pain. It's a good spot for acute stuff. So yeah, we'll be dancing to dislodge those layers and then send them down like a drain. And then the third part, the oh so important part, is hearing those lessons. So as layers go, we're going to be listening and watching, facing what's there. When I say listen, it's listening with your heart. You know, maybe you'll actually hear words. Maybe you'll see images. Or maybe you just know what that lesson is. So when I say listen, it doesn't matter how it comes to us. It doesn't matter if you don't see anything or if you don't hear any words. Just take it in your heart and trust whatever you do know. All right, so let's take a few minutes making some offerings at your altar or outside, whatever. And now that you know what we're really doing here, you can make a prayer for the specific thing. Then we'll come back and move.